Hey, welcome to the American Liberties Call. It is Monday, excuse me, June 10th. And tonight we have a special guest, Paul Hansen. But I just want to make some announcements just before we bring him on. The uh, as you all know, I have moved and I'm in a new location, and there's a storm there brewing, and it might create a problem for me with the internet. I don't know how stable the internet is, but we'll see. I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody out so there's no background noise. And the other thing is I'm going to be pretty busy from now on, but you're always welcome to call, and if I don't answer, just leave a message, and I will call you back. Um, Let me see. And I mean, other things are just normal things that happen, but I found just so that uh, I know this is about a tax call, it's not about an opportunity call or anything like that, although it's the opportunity to get yourself out of IRS problems. But I'm in some home-based businesses that are awesome. Now, I haven't shared too much with this list because a lot of people, you all have a lot of money, you don't need it. So I'm looking for people that need money, that are willing to do what needs to be done to help them make income. And that will help me. The more I make, that will help me to help everybody else, because even though people on my list are so affluent, when it comes to time to pay for services, all of a sudden they don't have any money. I just can't figure that out. But be as it is, I understand a lot of people don't want to get into home-based business and network marketing, and I'm kind of being sarcastic sometimes, but take it as my humor. My humor is sarcastic. Okay. With that being said, recently, as far back, when I say recently, as far back as, let's go back to Richard Boggs. I hear from Richard almost on a daily basis, and he's putting out some good information, which I'll be sharing in the emails once I finish unpacking and getting things ready. I'm not going to be full blown getting into everything until about another week or so. So, but there's some really good information that is coming out. In addition, working with Paul, I'm also working with somebody else that that has a good working plan. But and each have their own place in my world. Now, tonight we got Paul Hansen. Paul and I think so much alike, it's unbelievable, because when the government is coming at you, like John wanted to know, what can you do to preempt things that are going to happen? Like you got this Anna von Rice, whatever her name is. She puts out a lot of documents and a lot of good stuff that, well, it appears to be good. But there's a lot of people that are getting in trouble that have contacted us and wanting help to get out. So I don't know if it's her stuff or if the people that are using it are not using it correctly. And I would say the latter is more than the former, because the like we have a couple people we're trying to help in court, And one guy got convicted. I mean, because he goes into court making statements. When you make statements, you're giving the judge power to decide if your statement is relevant or not. For instance, you go in there saying, I'm not a taxpayer. Great. And it might be true. In fact, I would guarantee 100% that it is true. But you don't go in there making that statement. You're committing suicide. In fact, legal suicide. You might want to say something to the effect, and there's many ways of doing it. Paul will jump in and say it in another way, but it's still the bottom line. What facts or evidence do you have that I'm a taxpayer? Now, you know what a taxpayer means. It means that you're liable for the tax. I can bring up a list of all the statutes that would make an individual liable to pay the income tax. And not one item on that list represents or has a nexus between most Americans, especially me, because I know me. I'm not on that list. So you don't bring that up. You just know what you know. It's like an old lawyer said, you don't ask a question that you already don't know the answer. And so you turn around and ask the agent, what facts or evidence are you relying on that I'm a taxpayer? You know, I had a IRS agent on the witness stand during my situation, and I asked him that question. He said, well, you pay property tax, you have a driver's license. And and I said, oh wow, really? And then I started questioning that, and the judge overruled me and said, move on, Mr. Chapman. And I said, gee, I'm just getting started, man. I mean, this is great stuff. But it didn't really go anywhere, although the grand jury never come back with an indictment either. So that was a good show and a good time. But I learned a lot from it, that you don't make statements. All you're doing is fact finding. And if you can keep that foremost in your head, that you're a fact finder and not a storyteller, you'll get further into your case to win. So with that being said, I'd like to turn it over to Paul, and this is a Q&A too. If you have any questions, raise your hand, and Paul will answer the question if he can. Okay, so Paul, are you still on?
Yes. Can you hear me good?
Yep, I can hear you fine. Is there anything you like to add to what I said?
Well, if you're in court and you got somebody in the witness stand, hopefully you did some discovery, and you ask them. The main thing is that you track the indictment. You go line by line on the indictment, what they claim, and you don't have to defend yourself against something that's not on the indictment. But the indictment will say, John Doe is a taxpayer who lives in Michigan, state of Michigan or whatever, and county of, but anyway, you just go down the list in your discovery and you ask them for the definition of taxpayer. You ask them for the definition of county that they're relying upon, the definition of state, and just go down it. You don't. There's You don't have to ask them every word, but when you work with us, we know the key words that they throw in there. One of the main things they want to do in federal court is to get you to say that you're a U.S. citizen, because a U.S. citizen it gives the court administrative authority to basically deny you the Bill of Rights in your defense, and they prosecute you administratively, and that's not good, because it's very difficult, because you're not only trying to convince the jury, you're trying to convince the judge too, and that's no fun, because the judge is one of your biggest enemies in that courtroom. But as far as taxpayers go, one of the questions that is common is what evidence or facts, like you said, that do you have that I meet the definition of taxpayer in the written law that you're claiming that I'm violating in this case? I worked with a guy he's out of Michigan, a guy named Ed Schell, and he basically had the IRS tax code memorized, and they tried to hire him. And one of the main things he learned to beat the IRS, he beat them, I think, 60 times with various clients, and every case that got advanced into anything, they sealed the cases, so you can't even look at them. But the main thing he did is you have to track down the IRS agent that claims that you're a taxpayer. You're required to keep records. You're required to create a form that decides how much taxes you owe, like a 1040 tax form. You've got to get that. If you're going to win your case, you've got to get that guy in the witness chair. If you can't get him in the witness chair, you're in bad shape. And that's what you do with discovery. You find out who is the man that claims to have evidence to support their indictment, their claims in their indictment. So I was in Florida, IRS case. It wasn't IRS, but it was the United States against a couple of us. And it was very interesting how they tried to trick us into saying that that we've elected to become United States citizens. And we knew how to block that without a statement, keeping the burden of proof on them. And we were the only people to win a case in the Northern District of Florida in at least 8 years. Not a single person that went to trial won a case in Northern District of Florida, we were told, ever won a case, ever, any case. So the U.S. Marshal walked up to me when I was walking out. He says, I've been here 8 years. Not a single person has went to trial, and I don't know what you did, but I'm impressed. And so anyway, throw out some questions there. If anybody's got their hand up. Chap, you nearby?
I muted myself. Yeah, I muted myself out. I'm sorry. The nobody has their hands up yet, but I'd like to add to that. When you're challenging jurisdiction, in every case so far, the judge said, we got jurisdiction. Well, that's a non-responsive answer. In fact, if he does answer that, he said, well, hold on a second, Judge. Can you come down and get on the witness stand and get sworn in? Because you're taking the place of the plaintiff or the adversary, and he's the one that's supposed to show on the record that he has jurisdiction. That judge is going to come unglued.
You never want to say jurisdiction on a standalone position. You have to say personal jurisdiction, because the court always has jurisdiction to see if they got jurisdiction. So they always got jurisdiction, see if they got jurisdiction, but they do not always have jurisdiction, personal jurisdiction, territorial jurisdiction, or subject matter jurisdiction.
Okay, when you say they have jurisdiction, you mean in a wide range. They have jurisdiction, but not jurisdiction over you. Is that what you mean?
They have jurisdiction to see if they have jurisdiction. They always
Right.
have jurisdiction to see if they have
Right.
jurisdiction.
I get what you mean. Okay.
So if you go in there and say you don't have jurisdiction, the judge will say, yes, we do. Next. But anyway, as far as personal jurisdiction, for example, you bring it up. A personal jurisdiction, in a nutshell, is what did I say, do, or sign for this United States court to have jurisdiction over me as a man? Just that's exactly how you want to phrase it in your motion. And they have to produce the evidence on the record. They cannot sit quiet and let the judge do it. Now, most attorneys that don't have that evidence of personal jurisdiction will sit quiet. They'll act like it's a frivolous or non-meritorious challenge, and then the judge will start talking, and you'll get confused, and you think like, oh, they didn't even have to answer it. And the judge is cutting in, and we got jurisdiction. But that is a due process violation. I was told, I haven't even seen it yet, but a guy does legal research for me. He says he's found a case law that says that when you challenge personal jurisdiction, plaintiff must put evidence on the record just to meet your challenge. And if he doesn't, and the court continues, that it's a due process violation. Very interesting. And that sounds like it should be. That's the way it should be. A lot of these cases, they make it, they hide these rules up in their case law and basically makes it next to impossible for the average person to find it. And if you are an attorney, you're not allowed to use them. So it's difficult for most people. But we beat the IRS probably 100 times, and we've got it down pretty good. And you don't have to have it down pretty good. You just need to understand how to keep the burden of proof on the plaintiff and never shift it to yourself. The next jurisdiction is territorial jurisdiction. They'll have a lot of things that you did, and they have to prove that you did it in their land, or they have to prove that what you did reached into their land. It might be simply mailing a letter, shooting a gun and the bullet lands in their land, or whatever. But they have to prove it. You don't have to say anything except bring in the jurisdictional challenge. Now, a jurisdictional challenge is not a jurisdictional motion. Do not ever let them convert it to a motion. Motions can be summarily denied and dealt with on appeal if you don't like it. Jurisdictional challenges cannot be summarily denied. Court is basically on a type of temporary parole, and they cannot move forward until the other party produces evidence sufficient to complete the court so that they can proceed administratively. All U.S. courts are administrative. None of them are judicial. They're always administrative. They're enforcing congressional written law. The next jurisdictions, let's see, we talked about territorial jurisdiction. Let's just say I got a client that they claim he did 20 things, and they reached into the I can't even remember the commission. I can't remember what it is, but basically the stock. They claim that they reached in and violated rules of commerce at the stock market, and the guy had a independent business, didn't have nothing to do with the United States, and gathered money to. He would gather money to meet about $880 billion no, not billion, million, 880 million times 10. That's what it was. Loans to fund large activities all around the world, and they're coming after him, claiming that he's got false representation and things like that. And it's like crazy because they're saying he did all this stuff, but they're not saying where he did it and what land how it reached into violate the laws of the United States. And if it did violate something, which I see no evidence that it did, they have to tell you who was violated: the jurisdiction of the United States, people in the jurisdiction of the United States, or people outside of the jurisdiction of the United States, which would be fall under common law. Most of America falls under common law. 26% of the land mass is federal zone. If you do something in the federal zone, you're subject to federal laws generally. And then if you don't do something in a federal zone, then it defaults to the people's jurisdiction of common law, which is the balance of the 26%. So, excuse me. And then, so any questions on that? I'm going to move to subject matter jurisdiction. Chappie, any hands up?
Okay, any hands up? Raise your hand, ask a question. I guess you're putting them to sleep there. Let's get some excitement here.
He who wishes to learn must ask good questions.
I'm excited. Keep going.
All right.
Okay. Anyway, when the Lord lays a question on you, make sure you ask it, because he knows how to move these things along really good. Okay, subject matter jurisdiction. Subject matter jurisdiction means that the moving party, not you, forget about going and looking for it. Moving party must evidence the law that they're bringing against you. Okay, they have to prove that it's been fully promulgated. They have to prove that it actually has a nexus with you. They have to prove every element of the law. So subject matter jurisdiction is they have to prove the law that they're bringing against you. Not all laws that they bring against you are actually found in the United States written law. They'll bring something against you with a gun, for example, and they're pulling it out of the United States Code. Guess what? The United States Code is not law. Only potential evidence of the true law that Congress passed. The true law that Congress passed is statutes at large. Statutes at large talks about certain guns, certain lengths. And guess what? They scrubbed the certain guns and certain lengths when they turned it into the United States Code. So you really got to, there's thousands of them. So you really got to go into the law that they bring to you, go down to the source page, track it back to the statutes at large, and read the entire statute that was passed in that source, and you'll find the portion that they're bringing against you, and it might not read even close to what they make it appear in the United States Code. Basically, the United States Code is to make their net go much broader than it's supposed to. Just like the United States Code talks about a taxpayer. You got to go in there and look up the definition of taxpayer. And anyway, it opens up a whole new world. The interesting thing is that you don't have any relationship with the United States until you make one. You stay out of their land. Guess what? If you're not in their land, how are you going to have internal activity in their land? If you don't have internal activity in their land, how are you going to have internal revenue in their land? They can only tax internal revenue. Internal to what? Internal to their land. 26% of the American land mass. So, and they have to prove that. They might have a bank account that's internal, and you might have to pay taxes on that interest, possibly, but probably not. And then 99% of your labor that you extended and was paid for is not within their land. So They don't have any evidence of internal revenue. But anyway, you don't have to prove anything. You just have to ask the right questions and keep your mouth shut. We've had cases where we've asked the right questions. They said we don't have any answers. We just turned to the judge and we asked for a directed verdict because that's an essential element to the charge. And then little by little, you get the charge of the indictment knocked off. Before you know it, the IRS will stand up and acquiesce the case and walk away. Most of the cases we win are won before we go to trial because they don't want to go into trial and look really, really bad. We've had times in the IRS cases where we would bring in a personal jurisdiction challenge, territorial subject matter jurisdiction, all grouped together, all done at the same time, all done on the oral or orally and by filing of documents. And guess what? The whole thing disappears in the record. All the documents disappear and all the conversation disappears. So if you want people in the witness stand to, we've had cases where they wouldn't let them bring paper and pen into the gallery. Crazy. I just can't believe. It's so important to have your cell phone with you, so that people can tell you that they're getting blocked in the gallery because you got them there for your witness. They can text you a message that guess what? They won't allow us to bring in a notebook or an ink pen to take notes.
Well, in federal court, they won't allow you to bring in a cell phone.
Well, I'll tell you a story. When a lawyer told me this trick. Said, you walk into court and say, Your Honor, I don't know how to use my any laptop computer. I'm proficient on my computer right here. Some people use this as a phone, but this is my computer, and this is how I noticed the plaintiff has 5 computers. They call them laptops on the top of their desk over there. And Your Honor, you're not going to allow them to bring in 5 computers, and you don't allow me to bring in my computer, are you? And the judge goes, you can bring in your cell phone. Make sure the ringer's off.
Yeah.
That's how you can have your cell phone in there. And if they think you're texting, if they ask you your text, just say, no, I'm taking notes. You can text your notes outside the arena all you want. There's no law against that. Why would you text an important note and have it in a device that the U.S. Marshal might grab and break in half or accidentally lose on purpose? Why would you do that? You're allowed to put it on a cloud or send it to a number and have it recorded on the outside. So I think my clients are the only people that I know of that are allowed to bring cell phones into the proceedings. So during the proceedings, they're texting information to me, and anyway, it goes back and forth. So it's extremely valuable. But anyway, for example, you're sitting there with your cell phone, and your witness texts you and says they didn't allow me to bring my notebook in or my ink pen. They made me take it back to the car. So I stand up in court and say, Your Honor, the U.S. Marshals are not allowing my witnesses that are coming into trial to observe these proceedings. They're not allowing them to bring an ink pen in and paper, notebooks. Your Honor, isn't the press allowed to bring ink pens and paper in here? I see them all the time. And why are they allowed? Isn't this open to the public? And a lot of people don't have a photographic memory and perfect memory, so they like to take notes so that this public hearing can be a meaningful time to them and to everybody that comes. and to have a good record of the events here. We're allowed to have meaningful time and meaningful access to the court, aren't we, Your Honor? So would you instruct the U.S. Marshals to stop blocking my people that are coming into this proceeding from having an ink, pen, and paper? So no, they're not allowed to bring in a cell phone and stuff, but maybe someday they will. I don't know. We've never tried it yet. Or they could say that's their computer, because the press, they oftentimes bring in their computers if they can type on them. But anyway, so any questions out there?
Okay, while we're waiting to see if there's any questions on my window that the viewers can see, I have the Title 15 up, and taxes are commercial, okay? There's no ifs and buts about that. It's all under a commercial jurisdiction. And in the in the Commerce Code, which is Title 15, you see the definitions as used in this section. The term United States business. Get that? United States business. That's why you got to know the precise definition of a trade or business. A trade or business in the IRS code is defined as a public office. In Title 15 on the Commerce Code, a term or business means a United States citizen. That's why you don't want to be a United States citizen. And all the affidavits and all the your position to tell the judge I'm not a United States citizen, you're creating legal suicide. You want to turn it around and ask them, what facts or evidence are you relying on that I'm a United States citizen? Where's the definition? You can't go to the Constitution, because if you bring it up, the Constitution doesn't apply in this court. Go figure. So you don't want to be a United States citizen. All right, do we have any questions? Oh, we got somebody in the chat. Let's see. Hold on. First notice of not filing a tax return, what response?
Well, you'll have to send the notice to us, and we'll examine what language they use, because they send out various notices, and each person that receives the notice is in a different position. They might be a married couple. They might have some business in the United States. They might have some business in the non-United States land in America. They might have some business over land. There might be some evidence that they're a United States citizen. There's a whole bunch of things. They might have a nexus through the United States, through a public office. There's all kinds of things that they and we do not allow people that want to work with us to just draft something together, because that's like setting our clients in, spend them 15 minutes with them and how to play chess, and send them to in front of a grand champion chess player and expect them to do well. They will get destroyed. You have to put these documents together properly. You have to keep the burden of proof on them completely. And the less you put in, the better, because the more ammo, the more material you give them, the more they can throw up in front of the jury and make you look bad. So what we do is we try to keep it really simple, right down to the trade or business, the activity, any evidence of an office nexus here with the United States that would create internal revenue, and and shut them down. And if you do a really good job against that first letter, most of our clients do not get a second letter.
Yeah,
At least for a long-
and
at least
the
for a long
second
time.
the second question is, what are your fees? Less than $1 million. Okay, so just go ahead, send me a letter. I'll send it on to Paul, and we'll talk about it then. Okay, because there isn't a one price deal. We look to see if you have $1 million in the account. If you don't, then no. Seriously though, there's different letters takes a different response, different, more time, less time. There's a lot of things to consider, but it's not much on a letter to letter basis.
We had
I
one
hope-
client. We had one client. He wanted to save a couple $1,000s, and he did it himself. And he got stung for a $10 million tax bill that we could have prevented. Just stupid. $10 million. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, I mean, when I went to tax court, I thought I was good enough to do it on my own, or at least help with somebody that I thought would give me some good stuff. And they ruled against me. And then the DOJ sent me a bill. When they sent me a bill, I think it was for $3,000 for them to have this alleged lawyer uh, in tax court. They billed me the $3,000, and I did an affidavit, a conditional acceptance affidavit, and never heard from them again. And come to find out, that wasn't really a bill. It was just an amount added on to the tax. Go figure. Anyhow, do we have any questions?
Chappie?
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, Chap, this is Mark. Yeah, I was going to ask Paul and maybe yourself on the basis of when you get married, it is a contract and it is with the state, which then puts you in a threesome with the state, or maybe in that jurisdiction, they have jurisdiction over you because you had to get a license and permission to get married, even if we were going into a church and we were making our, reciting our commitment to our wife by doing it with God. But we basically ended up, because you do have a contract, how does that incorporate? Do you need to get maybe a divorce or have some type of affidavit where you file it with the courthouse that you've rescinded that contract? I don't know.
Well,
is there any truth to that?
Well, yes, there is. A contract is by the state. The state's a third party, and that's why they can rule over your private business between you and your wife. And and you don't have to get a divorce. You can just do an affidavit of annulment and file it on the record. I think that's what Eddie Kane did years ago.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's what I've heard, where you just go down to the court, you have it filed in the court, and then you take, I don't know, put it in your Bible or whatever you want to do with it, but that you would annul that contract, and then you would either say your vows and basically get remarried, or just annul it, and then something that would allow you to have your wife as your partner.
Well, you common
but
law
I again
wife.
want to ask another question.
Let me
Wife,
add to that.
which is fine too.
Hold on a second, Mark. Hold on. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah.
Okay. Now remember, internal revenue. Okay. There's two key words there: internal. The other one is revenue. Okay. Marriage, life.
Right.
Okay. It operates the same way as internal revenue. The only way you can have a state marriage license is if you are a resident in state land. The only way you can be a resident in state land is if you reside in land owned by the state. Most states only have like 5% on the average called federal zones in the common law state. Okay, most people don't live in that land. If you do not live in land that's owned by the government, you don't qualify, you're not eligible, and you're not required to get a state license. You can't even get one. And if you got one, you aren't qualified or eligible to get it. You don't have it. Even if you have one hanging on your wall, you weren't a resident of the state when you got that, you don't have one. So they have to prove that you were a resident, that you were eligible and qualified to seek a license when you got that license. And most people don't have marriage license. So it basically defaults to a common law wedding, which is not a contract, but it's a what do they call it when it's not a contract? It's a
Covenant.
Covenant. So a covenant is a type of contract, but it has a lot more than just a contract. And God comes into that in a big way. So does all your family. But anyway, we've had clients.
What about driver's licenses? What about driver's licenses? What about all of these other things that, again, put you in as another contract, like the birth certificate, all these things that have contracts, basically
let me
second
address
entity that they.
Let me address driver's license. Okay, we talked about internal revenue. We talked about marriage license. Now we're talking about driver's license. Driver's license is only applicable if you're driving in a federal zone. You gotta reside in a federal zone. The federal license. All state licenses are federal. If you don't live in their land, you don't qualify for a driver's license, not eligible, and you're not required to get one. Now they really make it difficult if you do business in their land, they can get a nexus for business, for using their roads for business. They cannot the taxing and license is very similar. Taxing and license is the power to destroy, so which means to stop. If they can tax you, they can stop you. It's not a right. Okay, if it's not a right, then it's administratively granted. So some passages through a federal zone is done by right. Other passages through a federal zone is done by it's a commercial activity. They can't interfere with your right activity, but they can tax your commercial activity. So if you're passing through to go Christmas shopping, I don't think they can produce any evidence that it's a commercial activity. You're not carrying any passengers or cargo for a fee or profit. Now, if you're delivering Christmas trees for some store to sell, different story. But anyway, that's how that works. And the license is active in relationship to the activity. The plates in your car, the driver's license in your pocket, it means nothing. It's the activity that is everything. Okay. The plate doesn't make the activity. The license in your pocket doesn't make the activity. The activity makes the activity. Is it commercial or is it a right? So you got to just examine it really close. Is this a right or is it a privilege? And you go at it that way. Mark, you're a truck driver. You probably do a lot of time as some of it's probably done as a right, and some of it's done as a taxable privilege.
Well, I'm not a truck driver. I do the water treatment business, which is plumbing,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
but none of that is done. So I'm not a truck driver, but you do send you when you apply for a license, which again I don't feel we need one, being that we're not in that transporting goods or doing services or being a limo driver or a taxi driver or Uber driver, whatever it might be. We don't really even need a driver's license to travel the roads. But again,
The only time I ever had an officer, which has been never, my driver's license, is if I'm in a commercial activity in their land. Otherwise, I don't give them a driver's license, because why would I give them a driver's license that is evidence that I'm carrying passengers or cargo for a profit or a fee in government land? Why would I hand them that document? It would be a false activity. False. So you don't hand it to them. You just look at him and say, "You're officer. Do you have any evidence that I'm carrying passengers or cargo for a fee or profit in land of your employer?" And don't say anything else. Just sit there and wait for him.
right.
To bring a supervisor to answer that question. When I do that, quite often they just call their supervisor, and sometimes they go, "Is that Mr. Hansen?" I go, "Yeah, I'll let him go."
Yeah. Well, I agree, but we do fill out.
You hand them a driver's license, insurance, or registration. You just gave them evidence that you're transporting or passengers or cargo for a profit, which may not.
Absolutely.
It might be true. It might be true, but you still got to be in their land, for that. We had a sheriff in Omaha, Nebraska. Every time he let his employers out, the cops, police officers, no, I mean the sheriffs, deputies, he'd tell them, "Now remember, you don't have authority to do much of what you're doing out there. Be careful. You don't have authority." He knew the law. We actually coached him. He was shocked when he found out. He was shocked when he found out that the written laws of the state of Nebraska don't apply except on a very small amount of the land in Nebraska. The rest is common law. The common law, they don't have any more authority than you and I do, which they still got a lot of authority there. We see a felony, we can jump on it just like they can. But go ahead.
Okay, well, that's fine. I just wanted to ask those qualifying questions because, I'm doing a lot of other things in the research side of it. And I know you gave me one that I thought was pretty incredible. But again, a lot of these things come up about all this contract and all these different elements that are in these contracts, like saying you're a U.S. citizen, blah, blah, blah. And you're signing a document that basically puts you in their eyes. It's like you're signing into a contract with them.
Yeah. But anyway, citizen in the Constitution, sometimes it refers to a person subject to their written laws, and other times it just refers to people that inhabit the land of America. So they have to define the word citizen that they're using at the time. And
Right.
Birth certificate is no, it's nothing. Don't ever worry about birth certificate. It's nothing. All that means is if you're 18 years old, the birth certificate has no effect on you at all, because you have to contract as an adult if you're older than 18. So don't worry about something that operated while you were a minor. But it does come in handy when you want to get a driver's license, so that you can, when you fly into some place, like I'm flying into Las Vegas Wednesday, and then going to get a car, you got to have a driver's license. So
yeah, right.
I don't mind having a driver's license. I just never give it to a cop when I get pulled over, unless I'm transporting passengers or cargo for your profit. Okay, next, or go ahead.
Yeah, I got another one that has a question, John from Chicago. John, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay,
Go
there it
ahead.
is. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, so
Well, wait, but before you start, somebody asked me to how to find a statute at large, and I'm going to go through it on the screen while you're all talking. And there's another question. Speak about passports. Okay, go ahead, John.
a lot of people know I'm a Chicago police officer, so I actually read the Illinois Vehicle Code. If you read the code, it says that the land that the vehicle code is applicable to is federal land within Illinois. But they don't teach us this in the academy, and most police think they know everything, so they're not even gonna think to understand and read it. Also, the good thing is that if you get pulled over by a police officer and use Paul's response, it's good because it's all on video camera now. It's on body worn camera, and you can get a copy of that. Secondly, Paul, the question I had for you was, let's say they state that you are a resident, for example, of Illinois. What response can they give if you ask them, what facts and evidence do you have that I'm a resident of Illinois? My understanding from law is a resident is just another term for a citizen of the United States who does not live on federal land, but land outside the federal zone, but still is a federal citizen. If you could speak to that, thank you. I'll mute myself now.
Yeah, when they give you a state driver's license, you must be a resident. You have to check the box that you're a resident. And the sad part of it is that you don't really qualify as a matter of law for that license. But at the same time, they make it difficult for you to function in life without it. You can't. It's difficult to get a bank account. It's difficult to rent a car if you're traveling. It's lots of things. It's really handy to have one. It's difficult to get on an airplane if you don't have some. That's the only time I use. Most of the time when I get on, if I got time when I get on the airplane, I always tell them I don't have no ID, and everybody says you can't get on, you can't get on, you can't get on, and I get on, and the Real ID Act, they keep bumping it back. They're having a big problem with that. I don't think they'll ever get that through because it's unconstitutional. But as far as residency, do you have any evidence that I've elected to become a resident of such and such state? They have to prove it. Same way with U.S. citizenship. Do you have any evidence that I elected to become a United States citizen? Do you have any evidence that I elected to have you mow my yard for $20? It's real simple sentence. So resident's the same thing. The term resident, I can't remember what it means in the statutes at large, but I'm almost positive it means you're actually saying that you live in a federal zone within a state. I mean, it's actually phrased that way: a state within a state. The state. I've never really figured out the definition of state, so. But it's a term that we use to try to get some geographical sense to something, but it really is vague. It's a proverbial term, but the laws, the written laws, in the court rules, court precedences, occasionally they'll say a state within a state. So you got the common law area of Nebraska, and then in that area of land that actually belongs to the people, and some of it's designated to be used by the federal government, military purposes. The U.S. Constitution is a military document. all subsequent constitutions, such as each state constitution is a military document. What's weird is in, I can't remember what year, it's real close to 1913. No, I don't know, I can't remember. I think when statehood got really common with it. But anyway, what they did is they took all the state constitutions and they scrubbed they rewrote them, and they scrubbed out the land jurisdiction. I mean, the boundaries. So, I mean, what do you know of that exists but doesn't have boundaries? Some people call it a corporation. So what they did is they actually incorporated a they created a constitution that mimics the land constitution, but it's merely a corporation that has no boundaries. Lay the original constitutions up beside each other in the state, and they're identical until you get to the boundaries. In the new constitution, I think Nebraska's came out in 1969 or something. No, 1869. But the boundaries are scrubbed out of it. And then, very interesting. But you don't have to learn all that stuff. You don't have to use it in court. They have to prove. They have to produce the evidence that you're a resident, U.S. citizen, person subject, personal juris, all that stuff. And then you've got the rest of your life to study it if you want and refute it. You don't have to refute it right there. You can come back in 100 years later and say, hey, they were wrong. My daddy wasn't a U.S. citizen, and he wasn't, and his land was not part of the state within a state, so that didn't belong to property tax. That was not within the scope of property. I know a guy that's taken $30 billion of land out of property tax, and got millions, hundreds of millions of dollars back for the people, hundreds of millions, and he basically went into federal court and he challenged that to produce evidence that they had taxing authority over 3 square miles in Orange County, California, which is the land is worth hundreds of billions of dollars now. Guess what? They didn't have any evidence of taxing authority. So the judge ordered just billions of dollars of restitution back to these people. He couldn't give the land back to them because it was all developed, but they did give them lots and lots of money. And we can do that too. Property tax only applies to land that the government owns or a consensual contract. And I don't think very many people have consensual contracts for property taxes. Otherwise, they'd say, no, I'll take care of my own little strip of road in front of my house. Does that help answer your question? I doubt if it did, because go ahead and ask, because I'm just so thankful that you're brave enough to come on and stick your head up. There's an old Chinese proverb: the nail that sticks up gets hammered. You're in a position to get hammered by your little boys club. Go ahead.
Okay. We have
Kathy,
Alicia.
let the guy talk. He probably got little comments there.
Oh, okay. I thought he was done.
The officer.
Oh,
John? You got
yeah,
any
can you
more?
hear me?
Yeah,
No, I'm good. I just wanted to in the Illinois Vehicle Code, it does the state thing. It defines it differently, one with a capital S and one with a small s. But you can tell after you read it, the one deals with federal land within Illinois, and the other one is non-federal land in Illinois. But yeah, just with respect, resident comes. My learning and teaching taught me that resident, it's the trust term, and it's res identification. Res is the property held within a trust. Identification, is identification. And if a resident is just a citizen of the United States who doesn't live on federal land, so his permanent place he lives is in Washington, D.C., but you're temporary living elsewhere.
That's true. It's called a domicile. He's domiciled in
Right,
the
I'm
District
sorry,
of
right,
Columbia, but he lives abroad. He can live anywhere he
exactly,
wants in the world.
exactly.
The Social Security cards used to have your address on the back, and it said like 1200 Pennsylvania Avenue, District of Columbia. So, Washington, D.C. They took that off after people started getting on the internet and stuff.
What's
But
interesting, I
that's what,
actually met a woman who actually had the original 1935 Social Security card.
oh, get a picture of it, send it to me, please.
Well,
I've been
it
looking
was
for one on the internet for years. Can't
yeah,
find it.
no, I met her on the job, but it was typed out obviously. But I believe her address is written on there. I'll get back to you on that. She
Yeah, I
passed
do.
away.
The if you go into the United States Constitution and you go down and you write down every time they use the word citizen, I think they used it 13 times,
Right.
and it's all lowercase c.
No, it's uppercase.
So,
Before the 14th Amendment and lowercase after.
uppercase c until you get to the 14th Amendment. Then it's what?
Lowercase.
Lowercase.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
Proper noun versus common noun.
Yep. They and it's true with corporates. You know, corporations. Let's just say there was a corporation called Paul John Hansen, which is my name, a corporation. They ask us to write that in all capital letters. But if it's the name of an individual man, then you can go upper lowercase. So they ask you to do that so it can be easily identified in the banking industry of which account it's supposed to go into, the man's account or the corporation. Thank you.
Okay. Now before I bring on Alexis, what about passports?
Passport is the okay. Let's say you're a man of right. Okay, you're afforded all your rights. Who in America can stop you from crossing the border outside? Who can stop you from crossing the border out to leave America? Only one group of people could possibly do that is the owner of land of another border. Okay, so if you're going to head toward the ocean, nobody in America can stop you. But if you head to the border between Canada, somebody probably owns the land on that border on the other side that has the power to stop you. But anyway, my point there is that the passport is permission to pass. So it's where are you passing? Where are you passing to? Passing into Canada, somebody else's land? Or are you passing over the seas? If you want to pass onto my land, Chappie, if I knock on your door, you know, I got to ask for passport. Hey, may I come in? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very simple concept. It's but you got to think of it as man of right. It's interesting. God allows all mankind to travel anywhere, as long as he doesn't unnecessarily disturb the ownership rights of another man. So if I own a section of land, generally in America, most you're going to have to do is walk a half mile to the right or the left, and it's going to be an easement for you to pass. Our laws require that an easement, the open way is provided. We call those roads, highways. Highways are just simply built up land so that when it rains, they're not muddy. How the term started. But anyway, God says that you have a right to not be landlocked. America honors that. Generally, you don't have to walk that far to be able to get to where you want to go without disturbing somebody unnecessarily. And passports the same way. So if you live in Mexico and you want to move in a peaceful way, God's law says nobody can stop you. But if you want to come to America and set up camp, then we got a different story going. Or if you want to move as a military force, we got a different story. So why you're moving, where you're moving, that's the passport. Now they call it a U.S. passport. They have to provide that passport to U.S. citizens and non-U.S. citizens on the same basis because the Northwest Ordinance says they're supposed to provide, the United States is supposed to provide means for us to operate in society. So they're supposed to respect our difference between a United States citizen and somebody that remains a state national in banking and travel and all kinds of stuff. Does that help?
Well,
every situation is different. So every situation is different. If I want to go on Chappie's land, that's going to be different than if I want to go on the land that's owned by the President of the United States. It's all different.
okay, there's a question. Do you have a website?
Yes. The main one you go to is freeinhabitant.info.
Freeinhabitant.info.
Freeinhabitant.info, and it can direct you to like five different websites. So that's the main one.
Okay.
You just go to contacts and the stuff on the top, and it'll direct you to my mailing location, my contact information, and my different websites. And every time I send an email out, it has my websites on it, my contact information. I travel a lot. I'm in Alabama now. Wednesday I'll be in Los Angeles, and then after that, I think I'm going to Vegas, and then back to Texas. So, but anyway, my phone number stays the same, and my mailing location stays the same generally. My websites are always there. Some people read those websites, and people like Chappie are very knowledgeable. They contact me and say it's one of the best sites I've ever seen. They like it.
Okay, Darren, do you have a question?
Well, I wanted to just add on some of the stuff he was bringing up before. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you could hear me. And of course, there were a lot of topics that caught my attention. But like even on the jurisdiction issue, there's numerous case sightings that basically it's citizenship that confers jurisdiction, not one's domicile, inhabitatory, or residence. That goes clear back from 1809 to the mid-1900s. And in my opinion, I just think the hook is actually citizenship, because one can be a people as declared in Chisholm v. Georgia, that could be in a singular or a collective basis, or you can be a state national. And that's also where the distinction of state is defined, because anytime you see the term state that is capitalized, they use a capitism, which means a political subdivision of the United States, versus where the term state in small letters means a geographic location or even a nation. You could even go back into Bouvier that even says the term country is one which is a member. But going back into the citizenship issue, even if you look up the basic term, citizen, you look at Black Law 6, it says one who submits to the dominion of government, and that's what a citizen is. But you can have the same rights without being a citizen. You could be a people, you could be a state national without being a citizen. And because citizenship is a political status that is defined, and the privilege is limited by Congress. That was stated in Ex parte Fung Sing, 1925. There was another case that also referred to a domicile citizen. That's why I don't use the term domicile or resident, because it can confer different meanings, and it depends on, where you're alluding to. And let me see, you were talking about the driver's license. Actually, if you look at it as far as the enforcement, yes, you're correct as far as you have to be operating in a commercial activity, where the U.S. Supreme Court did define the term transportation under ICC versus Grissom, and they also defined the term traffic in United States versus Golden State Bridge Tax Committee. And it basically means the same thing, one who's operating in a commercial capacity. You could even look up the term driver in black law, first to fourth, first two words says one employed. I also have a letter from the New York Attorney General back written in 1910 that even says you don't need a driver's license unless you're operating in a commercial captivity. So that's, that's the big thing that you have to look at. There were a few other issues that you talked about. I didn't write them down. I should have.
Can I mention something?
Yep.
Let me mention something real quick, just as you look there. If they're treating you as a U.S. citizen, let's say you are a U.S. citizen. You are a U.S. citizen. You're perpetually in commerce. Okay, you're perpetually in commerce, and they use that against you. But that commerce has to be interstate or intrastate. Interstate means from one federal zone to another federal zone. Interstate, interstate is one federal zone to another federal zone. Intrastate is just one federal zone, but the common denominator there is a federal zone. So when they are making all these court rulings about transportation and all this, they're actually making it in relationship to activity in their federal zone. That's really key. I've won so many cases.
It's the same thing under presumption. It's stated in am juris. It's stated in am juris there's a presumption of citizenship, and it even states in that section, it says until the contrary applies. And like even myself, which I have filed in several federal court cases, is that I entered what's known as a Declaration of Self-Determination, which is actually recognized under international law, which repudiates any citizenship presumption. And that's where I was telling Chappie a while back, if anybody's ever read, L.B. Bork's Red Amendment, which is a very good book, he did some good research. The only problem where he erred at is that he was sending notices to various agencies saying, no, we are, I am a state national under this, which is correct because it's defined under statutes at large, volume 66, 101, 821, and then it's codified under Title 8, 8 U.S.C. 1101, 821, and that's also cited in am juris, and it's also cited in another section. So what I was going to say, I just lost my train of thought. As far as your political distinction, but the problem was you can't do it by notice like that. It has to be filed as a judicial record in a court case, which is pursuant to what the Supreme Court stated in Talbot v. Jansen in 1795, and that basically repudiates that. It's in Talbot. It basically says that it relinquishes the character of citizen, which character means class or division. And you can basically do that because now you have a federal record, or a judicial record that states to what what you say that you are, your own determination, which was also stated in the U.S. v. Fox case, if everybody remembers Robert Fox, where he was traveling around with a license that said he was a member of the Kingdom of Israel or something like that. But he actually defeated the U.S. DOJ both in the district court as well as the appellate court. But that's how you can actually clarify your status. But it has to be done in an appropriate way. And once again, it goes back to jurisdiction of a court. It's the citizenship issue that, in my belief, is the crux. Is really the hook of everything. that's where they have you. Because remember, citizenship is the entrance into a political party. That's in Loria v. U.S., that's in U.S. v. Polson, U.S. Supreme Court cases that discusses that. So you're joining that political party, whether it's the United States or whether it's of a state, you are joining into that political party by being a citizen.
What word did you use? I couldn't hear it real good. You said something that sounded like clock a little bit, but I couldn't hear it.
Which part?
You said the main thing that gets you is you.
Oh, the main hook is claiming to be a citizen. Is claiming to be. You see, yeah, and that's whether it's federal or state, because also there's cases that even go back pre-14th Amendment that says is that it's so facto is that if you're a state citizen, you're also a U.S. citizen. And I say exclude the citizenship entitlement entirely. That does not preclude you from any constitutional protection. That was even stated in, if you remember, there was a show on C-SPAN where they had both the late Supreme Justices of Scalia and who else was it? That basically said even an undocumented immigrant has the protection of the first the five freedoms. But it gives you you're still protected because it's pursuant to the 14th Amendment. Is that you're still protected because it says person, not citizen. However, the person is another term that you can actually go to. And speaking of where that applies, and because you mentioned even God before, throughout the Bible, you got to understand there are numerous warnings about contracting with government for any kind of benefit or privilege, which was actually, it's referred to either as a snare, as a stumbling block, where I think first it was King David that said, if you sit down at the king's table, is that his food is a deceptive meat. Then it was also said in Proverbs by Solomon, it says before you sit at the king's table, it's better to put a knife to your throat than eat the king's dainties, for they are a deceptive food. Which talking about contracting with government, because most people don't understand even the concepts of the Constitution, because really the Constitution has absolutely nothing to do with the individual person, for the simple fact when it was first instituted, it was actually just a compact between the states and the federal government. And actually, when that was first introduced, when that was first introduced, get out of here. Sorry, I had a bug fly right in front of me. When that was first introduced, it was a very unpopular document between the people. If it was put to a popular vote, it would have been voted down. But because of the certain states acquiesced, that's how they passed the U.S. Constitution originally. But and most people don't realize is that the U.S. government is actually a pagan government, which is cited in the Treaty of Tripoli in Article 11. That the government of the United States is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion, which was ratified by the U.S. Constitution, signed by President John Adams on November 4th, 1796. But that's what you got to, and the thing is, most people don't understand. If you look at, what I was talking about was the warnings. It was like eating from the king's table or the free bread of Rome. King David said, let their table be a snare before them, or which should have been for their welfare, now has become a trap. That's in Proverbs 69:22. And then later on, Solomon said it, and then Paul reiterated David's warning in Romans 11:9. Said the same thing, because most people don't understand, even historically speaking, the great Exodus, when Moses led the Hebrew nation, they were not a captured people by force or by war, but rather they were a contracted people who voluntarily contracted with the Egyptian government due to their lack of self-sufficiency and self-government as a tribe, society, or nation. In turn, the Egyptian government granted them free housing, free food, free protection in exchange for a daily tally of 20 tallies of bricks from every man and woman under the Egyptian jurisdiction and protection. These were symbols of forced offering or tributes or tax payment, where 20% of their labor went to the Egyptian government, which is known as a reciprocal obligation, as cited in Minor v. Hapernet, and expounds on the maxim consent makes the law, which still exists today because America is still back in the bondage of Egypt. But when they came out of there, God actually commanded the people through Moses, said, you shall never return this way again, Deuteronomy 17:16. Unfortunately, we are back in the bondage of Egypt because we keep contracting back with government for different benefits and privileges. And that's the bad thing that we're doing, and we're doing it by our own ignorance.
Well, but we've won a lot of cases, and we kept it very simple. We simply go down the indictment. When they say something, we subpoena them. We subpoena them into court, or first we go into discovery. What evidence do you have that I elected to become a resident? What evidence do you have that I elected to become a U.S. citizen? And you just go down, just stick with the indictment, just go down. What evidence do you have that I had revenue internal in?
Right, because the plaintiff must meet the burden first.
Yeah, you just go down and keep it very simple. Don't make any statements. Keep it. I mean, what you're saying is probably true, but I don't think it'd be extremely damaging for the average person to try to present this to your arguments to a court. They would just tear them apart. But our success has been keeping it very simple and line for line, challenging the indictment, and just go down. And about a third of the way down, they realize that they're looking really, really bad, and an IRS agent stands up, prosecutor stands up and says, we're going to acquiesce for now. The case goes away.
Okay, I got,
True.
we're getting on to an hour and a half now, and we got Alexis that wants to, has had his hand up for a while. Go ahead.
Yeah, hey, sorry. I was here earlier and my computer freaked out. And I had to get on a backup computer here. So I got a little behind. Chappie, I was looking, you were kind of doing it silently, getting to I think you called it the statutes at large.
Yeah.
And I got to the United States Code page, but I didn't see how you were migrating from that point to get to the actual.
Well, at the end of the call, I'll go over that. Let's get through with the call. Do you have any questions other than that?
Not right now. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Just stay on after the call, and
Okay.
And I'll go over it.
right,
Okay.
Let me
Is
make
there
a
any
quick-
other questions?
Let me make a quick comment here on the individual that got a notice from the IRS. We have never lost a case where we responded timely to those notices. I put my name on the bottom of the document with the client. I am well known. My name has been found on lists in federal courts of one of the leading people that they respect and consider a real threat to the federal system, their statism. But it's it's imperative that you timely respond to that document properly. I don't even know of one client that's ever been attacked where they got those first notices to us, we responded. I can't even think of one. I might be wrong, but I can't think of one. We're talking close to 1,000 people. It is bizarre how quickly they run away from people that are connected with somebody with knowledge. But go ahead, Chappie.
Yeah, and that's true, because if you handle them in the very beginning, you're handling them in an agency. What do they call an agency? Administrative agency. You got to be in the administration for them to have jurisdiction. So you let them know from the front door, I'm not the party. But you don't say it like that, but that's what you're doing. Provide the evidence that I'm a part of your administration. When did I ever made you the administrator over my property? Which it could be your name, your money, your house, your wife, your dog, your cat, whatever.
Yeah, let me make a comment on that. I was contacted by a paralegal that worked with 70 lawyers. I can't remember if it was California. I think it was California. Anyway, high level law firm, and he contacted me. And he explained to me how to beat traffic tickets. He said, "Yeah, all these lawyers got together. They figured out how to beat traffic tickets." They go, well, how do you do it? They make sure that you get arrested. What? Yeah, because you get arrested, and then you get in front of the judge, and you say, "Show me the sworn verified complaint," or that's repetitive. The sworn complaint that pursuant to the Fourth Amendment, bringing charges against me. That's all you do. And then the judge sets another hearing, and you don't show up, and they arrest you again. I did that. I was arrested 5 times once, and the 5th time I showed up, the case was dismissed. And the sheriff followed me out. He says, "Man, I have never seen anything like that. Why would they dismiss a case you failed to show up in court 4 times? You were arrested on the stop, and then 4 times you failed to show up, and they dismissed the case without any argument other than you were requiring that document in the record of the standards of the Fourth Amendment." I went into great detail and explained it to him, and I said, if they can't get an administrative nexus with you, they have to follow the Bill of Rights. If they get an administrative nexus with you, they don't have to follow the Bill of Rights.
Exactly. It's a contract.
Yes, that's right. And this paralegal explained that to me. He says, I said, "What do you mean?" He says, if they have to follow the Bill of Rights, they got to go through a whole bunch of steps.
Well, the way I do it is when I get a ticket, I used to get a lot of them. I would just I would do a counterclaim, but in the interim, I would do a notice to the police officer and a letter to the chief judge of the county asking them, where did the police officer get the authority to, what is it? Boy, it's a bitch getting old. Get the authority to usurp judicial authority by issuing me a summons without a judicial seal. Boom, it goes away.
Yeah. Yep. What I asked him is, officer, I just want you to know, I'm going to subpoena you into court. You're going to have to bring in evidence that your employer owns this land. I said, I think you better contact your supervisor. And they go back to their car, and they come back and say, "Mr. Hansen, you can go." It's just that simple.
Yep.
Now, if you're on their land, it's a little different, doing a commercial activity. But they just come back and say, "Mr. Hansen, I don't understand, but you can go." It's so funny. I wish I could get them on YouTube.
Yeah. Okay, Alexis, do you have another question? Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, actually I did. As far as they'll, when you say, well, what evidence do you have? And then they go off the W-2s and the 1099s and do their own little automatic self-filings and say, well, that's our evidence. At that point.
But that's only prima facie. You got to push them.
Right, it is prima facie. Yeah. But I mean, they'll move on it unless you respond to it on some level.
Yep, you got to respond. If you don't respond, they just keep administratively mowing over you. If you respond, then they they get evidence that they're going to have to do it judicially under common law, and they can't win there.
I mean, well, usually they want to drag you into the tax court stuff, which isn't common law at all, of course.
You never want to go to tax court, in my opinion.
No.
Never. But
Yeah.
Chappie's exceptional. He can go to tax court and do pretty well. But I still wouldn't recommend going to tax court. But anyway,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, that was just my question, really.
Yeah, 1099 can never be used as evidence as taxes, internal revenue. Just prima facie evidence.
Right.
Same with W-2 before. It's all prima facie evidence. They have to, if challenged, like Chappie said, they have to produce the factual evidence before the court can move administratively. And if they can't, the court's got to go. It can't go down that trail.
Right. So if you say the right things and you don't give him handles to grab onto you, then you're in good shape, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's challenged. It's properly challenged as simply as you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
You can
All right,
do it in 5 words. What you want to do? 5 words.
Yeah.
You know, if anybody's new on the call, and on my website, which is AmericanLiberties.club, I have a 4-hour video, 2 hours. You know, there's 2 videos, 2 hours each, of how exactly what happened when I went through the grand jury process. And I'm the only one, and I'm not bragging, believe me, but I don't know, let me put it this way. I don't know anybody else that went through what I went through and came out clean.
Yeah. And
There
Chappie,
might be.
Chappie,
Yeah.
you got to remember, Chappie, if you did it again, they still might try to throw you in front of a jury if you did the same thing. So it's pretty. Tax courts are dangerous. The tax courts are for taxpayers.
No. This wasn't tax court. This was in when they tried to indict me.
Oh, before the grand jury? Well,
Yeah.
Very few people ever get in front of the grand jury. I've never been able to get my clients in front of a grand jury. But,
Well, they asked me.
They figured.
The subpoena. There was a subpoena that they wanted me to do books, you know, to bring books and records and something else, handwriting and all that. And I said, sure. They said, okay, well, report to the IRS agent's office. I said, no. It says the grand jury. I'm to appear before the grand jury. And that's who I'm going to appear from if you want me to come in. And sure enough, that's what happened.
Yeah, that's very rare.
And he go,
I would go in front of the grand jury, but I would not go to tax court. I agree with you.
Yeah. Here is my W-9. When somebody asks me, as shown on the screen here, and then I go down and I show them exactly how they're violating the law by even asking me to fill out a 1099, because it's only for a trade or business.
Yeah, we fill out a W-8 with an affidavit. It does the same thing.
Yeah.
Oh, putting place for the
I
order.
used many times at W again.
All right.
Instead of a W-9, a W-8 with an affidavit, negative averments, positive averments on it. But anyway, that's part of the time.
Okay, well, I hate to be a party pooper, but we had a good call. Is there any last questions that anybody would like to wind this call up with? Going once. Going twice.
Sold.
Okay, I'd like to thank everybody for coming on the call. Donations are always appreciated, less than $1 million. And if my PayPal or Cash App, my Cash App is the $ American Liberties. My PayPal is americanliberties.llc@gmail.com. And my Zelle is chris@americanliberties.club. So those are 3 ways that you can send me less than $1 million. Other than that, I thank you everybody for coming on the call. I'm going to be sending out some great and good information. And if you want to have a conference with Paul, let me know. He went off, but I think he charges something. I forget how much an hour, but the first time call, I got him to waive fees. So with that being said, God bless America, and this call is now officially over. Good night, everybody.